popular intervention in the rest of Ethiopia. So in that scenario, I don't really expect serious destabilizing consequences in the rest of Ethiopia or the broader region as a result. The issue will be if the federal government ends up in a very protracted effort to take control of Tigray and capture the leadership and establish the provisional government, well, that will end up sapping the federal government's resources. It will deal a blow to the federal government's political credibility after saying that this would be a quick and clean operation. In those circumstances, the federal government would be materially weakened and their opponents politically emboldened. And there is an awful lot of discontent and fragility in the rest of Ethiopia. So in that circumstance, we could lead to additional destabilization. And of course, should Ethiopia be destabilized as a whole, well, undoubtedly that will have a regional impact in the Horn of Africa, because Ethiopia is the pivotal state in that region.
You mentioned that you haven't heard, or that we haven't really heard from the Tigrayan leadership in the most recent days. In the next week or two, what are you expecting could happen, or what are you fearing could happen?
Well, I wouldn't say fear, or I don't want to be too, I mean, obviously there's various different pathways here. Obviously, International Crisis Group, we're just hoping that this political dispute and this conflict can be resolved with a sort of minimum loss of life. It is hard to pick a sort of practical, it's certainly hard to pick a sort of practical and peaceful path through this. But I guess that's another issue. I mean, but I guess the various pathways here are that, as I mentioned, perhaps the federal government will be successful at getting hold of these Tigrayan leadership. Therefore, we will see the end of really sustained and strong armed resistance. There will still be political discontent, huge amounts of it in Tigray. But I think in that circumstance, maybe the federal government will be able to take control militarily and then begin to sort of impose its will politically on the region. So that's one possible eventuality. It is also possible that, as the Tigrayan leadership claim, that they're just biding their time here, that their retreat from the cities and from the regional government was strategic, that their forces and their firepower are reasonably intact, and that this is a phase where they are kind of soaking up the federal government's offensives and dealing blows to it, and then at some point in the future they will go on the offensive. Now, right now, that doesn't look particularly credible to me. It looks like the Tigrayan leadership and their forces are embattled, that they are facing heavy aerial bombardment on whatever locations they are residing in at the moment, and that they are probably in a process of lying low and essentially, sort of trying to survive more than anything at this stage. But I do see the potential for quite sustained armed resistance here. And I also see quite a lot of popular support and elite support in Tigray for the resistance against this federal government intervention. So in the medium term, that sort of suggests that there will be some form of continuing instability.
William, those are all my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think that, obviously, a key focus in this conflict has been, why no negotiations, why no mediation? And I think, really the dynamics of that have not changed at the moment. The federal government is still very much set upon achieving its military objectives, and it's still being very resolute in terms of its responses to international actors who call for, unhindered access for humanitarian agencies or independent investigations into reported atrocities and war crimes, or who call for mediation. We're still in this phase of the conflict where the federal government is insisting this will be over soon, and it's been a success. And at the moment, there is no real, despite a lot of concern in the international community, we haven't really reached the stage yet where there's some sort of significant momentum and pressure externally to do anything to alter the federal government's position.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
For HAPS and Quick Hits News, this was a special report. Thank you.